So these last two mantras, which positively expressed the same thing that the three famous monkeys express, and the second mantra, which was about swasti, which means well-being. We have already discussed these two mantras in great detail. So now today we can approach the 10th and the last mantra of the Shanti mantras. I had already introduced the text from which this Shanti mantra has been taken. Amongst the principal Upanishads, this is the one that speaks the most about yoga. It speaks about particularly the 8-limbed path of yoga. It speaks about asanas, it speaks about pranayama, it speaks about various aspects of yoga. The very discussion starts with dhyana yoga, and no less than the original master who can really be seen as the father of yoga, Kapila, has been mentioned, as I explained in greater detail in my previous session. Now a few words still remain to be said about the seer of this mantra, whose name is Shvetashvatara. As the text, the name of the text suggests, Shvetashvatara Upanishad, the Upanishad of the Shvetashvataras. Somehow, in traditional expression, the masters always use the word in plural, which is quite strange, which seems to indicate that this Upanishad for the traditional masters was the Upanishads of the students of Shvetashvatara. So his students collected these teachings, and to a great extent what we find in the Upanishad, in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, is in fact a collection. It's very difficult to know which sections are actually by Shvetashvatara, but one thing is sure, that there are some sections in it which are extremely ancient and which in other sections of the Vedas were seen by other Vedic masters, and that's why cannot be thought to have been seen by Shvetashvatara himself. So Shvetashvatara Upanishad is more a collection by his students who can we say, bore the name? Yeah, the past participle of bear would be bore his name. And that is why the common expression, when Shankaracharya, for example, refers to the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, he says, thus says the Upanishad of the Shvetashvataras, in plural. It's quite a common expression. So, what we know about Shvetashvatara is the same like most of the masters of these mantras, nothing. Except that his name itself is quite a strange name, but not quite strange for extreme antiquity, where what modern anthropologists refer to as totemic names related to some animal, for example. So Shvetashvatara, the one with the white mule. The one with the white mule. Or for example, even like this, there are many animal names in rishis who have such names. Even, for example, one of the greatest prophets of antiquity, Zoroaster, who is the prophet of the ancient Iranians. Zoroaster is in fact Jaradushtra. In Sanskrit it would be Jaradushtra, the old camel. that's what it means. So I think in those days, there were certain masters who had such, what we call today, totemic names. But if you ask the traditional masters what Shvetashvatara means, they say Shveta means clean, purified, where there is no rajas, where there is no tamas, no crests, no troughs, but a total equilibrium. And Ashvatara, because Ashvatara are the senses, and the Upanishads always picture the senses as horses of this chariot. So the one with purified senses. And how can you purify the senses? Patanjali and Vyasa in his commentary gives the most wonderful explanation too, because every time our senses come in contact with something pleasant, we enjoy it, but then also something changes within ourselves that we start to cling to it. We don't enjoy it and then let it be, let it pass. Enjoy it, let it pass. That's it. But we start to cling to it. No, I need it again. It should not pass. I should have it. So this is one problem, what Patanjali calls raga, the coloring of the mind by something that is pleasant. And if something unpleasant comes, then it will pass. Just be patient. Let it pass. But when it passes, then that sense of tremendous hatred which it leaves in its trail. Yes, in that moment I understand if it is unpleasant, then I have to do efforts to remove it because it's unpleasant. So that makes complete sense. But why should it leave tremendous hatred in its trail? That tremendous hatred, that again is what you can call a negative coloring. If this is a positive coloring, then hatred is a negative coloring. So, what Vyasa says in his commentary on the sutras on pratyahara is that in every sense contact is either followed by attachment, selfish attachment, coloring of the mind, or by hatred. Someone who is able to touch the objects with the senses without these two in their trail, such a person has mastered the practice of pratyahara. And such a person would be called Shvetashvatara according to the traditional masters who explain the name of his teachings. And this is therefore completely impossible to achieve without someone practicing the eight-limbed path of yoga. Pratyahara requires pranayama requires asana, and the kind of depth in asana that will lead to pranayama and pratyahara requires yama and niyama. Without that, our asana practice cannot lead us into the depth of pranayama, nor it can lead into the depths of pratyahara. So yama and niyama are essential, and that's why Shankarananda, this 12th century master about whom again we know very little, but we know a lot about one of his students, one of his disciples, who was the key mind behind establishing one of the most influential and somehow culturally beneficial empire in the south of India, known as the Vijayanagar Empire. So he explains that Ashtanga Yoga Nirataha. Shvetashvatara basically means someone who is engaged in the practice of the eight-limbed path of yoga. And if you look at the plural usage, the Shvetashvataras, the ones with the white horses, the ones with the Shveta, not even white, but it is more radiant. the one with the radiant horses, it basically means the Upanishads of the Ashtanga yogis. That is how ultimately the traditional masters saw it. And this makes total sense, and that is why usually several of the commentators who have written beautiful commentaries on the Yoga Sutras have also written commentaries on Shvetashvatara Upanishad. So Vijnana Bhikshu, who is, I love his commentary because in his commentary you can really see that he speaks from experience, unlike some other commentators which are more scholarly in their approach. So Vijnana Bhikshu has written a beautiful commentary on the Yoga Sutras as well as on Shvetashvatara Upanishad. And similarly, another commentator, Narayana, also Narayana Tirtha, for years I was searching for his commentary on the Yoga Sutras. In fact, at the time, this was back in 2005, 2006, when George Feuerstein was still alive, and his commentary on the Yoga Sutras is one of the most famous commentaries on the Yoga Sutras. And this commentary was written in the 60s or early 70s. In fact, I remember seeing it as a child in my mother's hand. So it's a very old commentary. And towards the end of his life, he wanted to write Advaita Vedantic commentary on the Yoga Sutras. And for that, he wanted to base his explanation on Narayana Tirtha's commentary. I was helping him a little bit with grammatical explanations of the Yoga Sutras and everything. And then he asked me to search for this, but we couldn't find it. He used somebody else's notes of that commentary, and then eventually he completed that book. I have a PDF of that book with me. Fortunately, I don't know if it ever got published because he passed away. I think he didn't tell me ever that he was suffering from cancer, but he was in fact suffering from cancer. I only came to know after suddenly for 10-15 days there was no exchange because we used to work through emails, and then his wife no. In fact, yes. Very true. Yes. There was a last moment exchange. Yes, before he was leaving. Yes, true. Completely. It's a long time. So, in any case, after a while, I eventually found that commentary on the Yoga Sutras many years later. I have it now. And the same commentator has also written a commentary on this Shvetashvatara Upanishad. So somehow Shvetashvatara Upanishad has always been important from a yogic perspective. Those who look for the bridge between Advaita Vedanta, non-dualistic Vedanta, and yoga, specifically Ashtanga Yoga, the eight-limbed path of yoga, they find the bridge through Shvetashvatara Upanishad. So that is how important this Upanishad is. Let's study the mantra and then explain it. 6 chapters. 6 chapters. Not very big. I think around 10, 15, 20 verses each chapter. Yes. So, yeah. Let's see. Shvetashvatara. Yes. Shvetashvatara. The subject of this mantra, which comes towards the end of the text, before the text concludes, emphasizing on bhakti, on supreme love. Again, something unique for the Upanishads, because it is only this Upanishad which specifically emphasizes so much on bhakti. Later on in the Bhagavad Gita, you find bhakti as the central idea. But before that, this is the Upanishad which really So you can even see that Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Shastra, the teachings on yoga, is a clear development of this collection of teachings, because what we find towards the end in this text is Sharanagati, to take refuge, supreme love, and then deep insight coming from the master. So this is precisely the pattern of the Bhagavad Gita. So you can say that the Bhagavad Gita is patterned on the seed-like pattern presented by Shvetashvata Upanishad. Shvetashvata Upanishad is certainly more ancient than the Bhagavad Gita. That is why we can say that. So this mantra is about taking refuge, taking shelter. For example, when the sun is very strong, then we take shelter. Or when hailstorms are happening and hails are pelting, then we take shelter. When there is some suffering, some depression, some discomfort, then we seek shelter. And if we don't seek shelter anywhere else, then eventually many of us, sadly, in this world, seek shelter in death. So that is the most unfortunate thing that a person can do, the saddest thing that a person can do, because one should in fact seek shelter not in death, but seek shelter in life. And this mantra is about seeking shelter in that life. So that is the subject matter of this mantra. Whenever we are tormented by suffering, when we are tormented by confusion, when the 5 kleshas, ignorance, ego, attachment, hatred, fear, they cause suffering, we are deeply troubled by them, then we seek shelter. And where should we seek shelter? This mantra is about that. Usually, we seek shelter in our understanding. And that is precisely what happens in the Bhagavad Gita, that when Krishna takes refuge in his best friend and teacher, Krishna says, seek refuge in your own understanding. Buddhau Sharanamanvicha. Buddhi means faculty of understanding. Seek refuge in that. But even if that is incapable of surmounting the problem, then what? Then we have to seek refuge in the light which enlightens the intellect, which enlightens the faculty of understanding. So it is like if we are floating down the river, then sometimes the river is peaceful, sometimes there will be rapids. How they are called rapids, where the water is very strong, and then that tumbles the boats. Sometimes it even gets capsized. That's what people enjoy when they do rafting. And serious injuries take place. Many people, some people have died, and a lot of people known to me have had serious injuries. Thigh bones completely bent, you remember, completely scattered. Further up here. So, yes. In fact, I myself was. You remember, once got caught with those 2 German friends in that rapid. In the last moment, we found a stone and we were saved. Otherwise, the 3 of us, we were not doing rafting, we were just swimming there, taking bath. Okay. So, in those moments, sometimes the water is very peaceful, sometimes there are rapids. The only way to find total peace is to either reach the shore and bind the boat to the shore, and if you are in a shoreless ocean, then to get hold of the substratum, the very bottom, the very foundation. That's what anchoring means to get anchored. And meditation is about that. Because the mind, the intellect, they are constantly flowing like a river, sometimes peaceful, sometimes rapids. Yes, yoga helps us tremendously to pacify the flow of the mind, but still rapids will inevitably come. Even the Buddha complains of pain in his knees in his old age when he's not in a state of meditation. That suffering is still there. What to do then? What to do then? In those moments, the idea is to get anchored, which means to reach the very substratum, the very foundation. And this mantra is about that, taking refuge in the light which enlightens even our understanding. So let's study the mantra, the translation, and then I will explain it briefly. Om Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tamha Devam Atma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tamha Devamatma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om, I, desirous of liberation from ignorance, take refuge in the luminous one who is illuminated by the understanding of the self, or who is the light of the body and the intellect, or who is the witness of the intellect, and is the one who creates Brahma and delivers to him the Vedas. Om, peace, peace, peace. So, this mantra is not even about taking refuge in the Vedas, in the teachings of the masters. No, not in that, but in that which is being pointed at by those teachings, which is not in those teachings, but which is to be found within oneself. That is the most beautiful thing about this mantra. Coming back to the mantra, Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam, the one, the light, the supreme light, which creates even Brahma. What Brahma means? Brahma, first of all, is the creative principle in the trinity of the Vedic understanding. Brahma is the creative principle, Vishnu is the preservative, sustaining principle, and Shiva is the destructive principle. And these three principles are constantly at work, even now within our body. Destruction is not something that will happen after 50 or 80 years in our body. It is constantly happening. Constant renewal is taking place. In fact, modern science tells us, medical science tells us, that we produce and get rid of as much cells in 1 year, which is equal to the body weight of our body. So if we are around 70 kgs, then we produce 70 kgs of cells in a year and get rid of them. 70 kgs of cells, we get rid of them every year. This is why I say that even this body is seen from the perspective of time, is like a river. Breath is like a river, the body is like a river, and the mind is like a river. It's constantly renewing itself. So these three principles of nature are constantly at work. And the creative principle has some tremendous amount of information in it. And that is why it can constantly create. There is some tremendous amount of information present within that creative principle. And it is that which the masters believe is the source of the Vedic teachings. In other words, the masters don't credit the individual seers of the mantras as the author of the mantras, but the universal collective consciousness which is present within all beings as the original. So even when we start speaking about the rishis, rishis are the masters, the seers of the Vedic mantras, we always say the supreme rishi is Hiranyagarbha prana, this omnipresent life force present within every being. That is the supreme rishi. That is the supreme master of the Vedic mantras. These individual persons, Vasishtha, Vamana, all the great souls, saints and sages that I mentioned as part of whether it was Trishanku or whether it was Vamadeva or Bharadwaja or whoever it was. I told stories about so many of them. All of them are of secondary importance. But it is that collective intellect from which, and that's why one of my teachers, Swami Veda, from whom I was fortunate enough to understand some of the depths of meditation, because he was a great practitioner of. I personally, it's my personal humble opinion that if Guruji was what Guruji is for asana, he seems to be for the depths of meditation, particularly the meditative aspect. Just my humble opinion. And he used to say that even if all these so-called books of the Vedas would get completely destroyed, as long as the practice of meditation is known to humanity, they will always continue to resurface. And that is precisely what happens in every cycle of creation. In destructions also the Vedas get destroyed. Everything gets destroyed. But not from that collective intellect. In the new cycle of creation, again, the Vedas arise. And then again, they get destroyed. So, but the master here says that I'm not even talking about the collective intellect. Now I'm talking about the one which gave birth to this collective intellect and gave what you see. He's saying to the masters of the Vedas, the prana, the universal life force present on this earth, which you see as the supreme rishi of the Vedas. I'm talking about that which gives the Vedas to even that master, that collective intellect. That is this pure, contentless consciousness, the light of consciousness. And that's why the word Deva has been used for that. So, because Vedas are thoughts, we are not ultimately concerned about these thoughts. We are concerned about the light which enlightens those thoughts. Those thoughts, however beautiful they might be, they are ultimately redundant. They become completely redundant once the awareness of the light enlightening those thoughts arises. And that's why even if Patanjali's goal of Sampradhyata Samadhi, object conscious depths of meditation, is to cultivate Ritambhara Prajna, the truth-bearing intellect, his ultimate goal of Nirbija Samadhi, seedless state of meditation, can only be achieved when a person even detaches or non-attaches himself or herself from that deep wisdom, knowledge and understanding. Even a detachment from that. Then that becomes redundant. The purpose has been solved. once the boat has crossed the river, it's of no use. Then it becomes redundant. So I take refuge in that Deva. In that Deva means radiant essence. Div means light. So it's the inner light of consciousness. And the key word here is Atma Buddhi Prakasha. Atma Buddhi Prakasha, which various masters have explained in various ways. Atma means self, Buddhi means intellect, and Prakasha means light. These are the three meanings. And the different interpretations depend on how these words are related to each other grammatically. So there are three major interpretations. The first one explains that Atma means the self, and Buddhi means my intellect, not anybody's intellect, but my own intellect, which I have access to, because I don't have access to anyone else's intellect. Intellect means this faculty of understanding, through which we comprehend the world around us. Not only, as I explained in great detail earlier, it's not only because the Sanskrit word intellect does not capture the essence of the English word intellect does not capture the feeling essence of buddhi. Buddhi is both. Buddhi feels. Buddhi experiences, buddhi feels. So it's also that rational aspect, but it is also the feeling aspect. So that buddhi within me, and prakasha would be the light which enlightens it, which means, in other words, you can explain it as the witness of my buddhi. This buddhi I experience, but this radiant one that I'm speaking about is the witness of the buddhi, which means the buddhi consists of these constant stream of changing ideas and thoughts. Yet every idea and thought, image, feeling, emotion that arises is conscious. So there is a changing aspect of buddhi and there is a changeless aspect of buddhi. The content constantly changes. Sometimes I'm thinking about a tree, then about the 10 Shanti mantras, then about a problem, then about the food that I'm going to eat. So the content constantly changes. But something that doesn't change in all these changing contents is what we call Chaitanya, the light of consciousness. Because every thought is conscious. Every thought that arises is conscious. So that light which is present within every thought, it's that light which doesn't change. Whatever thought arises, that light is present. It is like a light. Whoever enters the room gets enlightened. The person enters, it is Siddhartha. He goes out, another person enters, this is Mataji. So like this, people change, but the light is the same. The same bulb is shining. Whoever is present gets enlightened by that. So it is that light, not the changing content, but the light which enlightens this changing content, which is what Atma Buddhi Prakasha stands for. In the scheme of yoga, Atma Buddhi Prakasha also means, it can also be explained as the radiant essence within me which can be enlightened only through my own understanding, which means which cannot be enlightened by someone else's second-hand understanding, which means the understanding that I receive from reading the texts, reading the books, listening to the masters, that is seen as second-hand understanding. To keep it short, if you remember the story that I have been talking about quite often, and we so often speak about it in the context of Vedanta, you are the 10th. You know, when 10 friends go out and one of them, they believe that he has been drowned, And because they are counting each time 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then the other one counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. Every time it is 9. And so they start weeping. They become sad that we have lost one friend. When we started, we were 10. Somebody else, our senior one, somebody else counted us and we were 10 and now we are all just 9. So where is that one? And so they start weeping, and then somebody else who was seeing this drama he said, no, the 10th one is there. Don't worry about this. The 10th one is there. In that moment, their grief finishes. But then they start looking. Where is it? Where is it? Have you hidden him somewhere behind the tree? Or then he says, no, you are the 10th. And in that moment, wow. And then everybody is happy, laughing, enjoying their ignorance now. And this is precisely what the Vedantic teachings are about. The masters, all they can do is tell us the 10th one is there. Look for it, search for it. And then we start looking for the self, run here and there. But then ultimately, you are the one. That's all. You just have to realize it, that you are the one. And that is why there are these beautiful passages in the Vedas that the masters had heard that the beloved is omnipresent, and they searched for it by walking ceaselessly throughout the earth, but could not find it. But then when they looked within themselves, that is, when they realized that we were always sitting in it. We were sitting in our beloved itself. So, that realization that I am the one, that comes from within, and it is only that inner realization which ultimately makes us aware of that essence. And this is something that cannot be, teachings can be conducive, but a person can listen to the teachings for their whole lives and never realize it. Or many realize it without ever listening to any teachings. Ramana Maharshi maybe didn't listen to many teachings, but he realized it because the awareness, the preparation was already done in many, many lives earlier. So, teachings are required as preparation, but they are not the same as the experience within. So this is the light that can only be grasped by the inner experience, which is completely independent from any teaching. And again, this idea of independence of inner experience from any teaching is very important for Patanjali. It is very important. He mentions it in the first chapter, he mentions it in the third chapter, and the same idea, one of the commentators explains Atma Buddhi Prakasha, that this essence which can only be enlightened by your own understanding, and therefore not through any received knowledge, second-hand knowledge, which is more just like a map to chart out the territory on which we have to walk. But ultimately, we have to walk ourselves. The map is not the same, so all the Vedas and everything, at the end of Shvetashvatara Upanishad, which is the 11th Upanishad, the last Upanishad, this is basically of the principal 11 Upanishads, this is the last one, and at the end, in a way, the master is telling the student all these 11 Upanishads that you have been studying now for 12 years, usually that's the time which it takes to prepare and study and everything, all these 12 detailed Upanishads. He's saying, it's not this, it's what you find within yourself as a result of that. So it is that light that I take refuge. This is the second interpretation of Atma Buddhi Prakasha, and the third interpretation would be the light which enlightens the body and the intellect and all the layers in between. So if you remember our discussion the other day of the 5 koshas, so this is the light which enlightens all the koshas, which means kosha number 1, body, kosha number 2, the breath, kosha number 3, mind and the senses, and kosha number 4, the intellect. The light which enlightens all these, which even on the level of the body, every cell has a consciousness to it. So that light which even this physical body, is enlightened by it. The prana is enlightened by it. The mind and the senses are enlightened by it. And even the intellect, the faculty of understanding and feeling, is enlightened by it. So the light so I take refuge not in any one of these 5 layers, but I take refuge in the very center which enlightens these 5 layers. So the object of refuge, ultimate refuge, has been very emphatically pointed out by the master here. And so prakasham, mumukshurvai, why do I want to take refuge? Because I'm a mumukshu. Mumukshu is a beautiful word. It simply means desirous of freedom. That's all. Much means freedom, and mumukshu means desirous of freedom. That's all. Freedom from what? Freedom from the 5 fundamental causes of suffering: ignorance, ego, selfish attachment, hatred, fear. From suffering. So mumukshurvai sharanam aham prapadye. I take sharana, which means refuge, which means to take shelter. And in fact, there are 2 words that have been used in Sanskrit for taking refuge: sharana and prapatti. Both words have been used here in the same sentence, sharanamaham prapadye, that I take refuge in that essence which is present within me. And if we would follow the pattern of the Upanishad, of the Bhagavad Gita, like only after taking refuge in a teacher should teach, because the very recommendation or the advice to a teacher from the Vedic masters is wait for a window is open and enter only after that. Even, for example, Vinoba Bhave, the spiritual successor of Mahatma Gandhi, my father's master, he used to say that a teacher should always be like the sunshine and never like wind. Wind forces its way into the house. The sunshine just waits out there on the doorstep, and when you open your door, it's there to enlighten. So there are both types of teachers. Some teachers are like the wind. They force themselves. They don't wait for you to open your doors. They bang open your doors and clean all the filth air that is in there. That is also, they are also doing great service. So it's not that they are any disservice to the society. They are a tremendous service to the society, because someone who is simply out of some illogical fear never opens their door, then their doors should be shattered. But yes, the advice to a peaceful teacher is to wait patiently till the door opens and then enter. So the same is also the case in here. When we, through the teachings of the masters, we come to know that we have to take refuge in ourselves. Then what has happened in the Bhagavad Gita, the same community, the whole idea, the whole pattern of the Bhagavad Gita is in fact to show that when the Arjuna, the pure-hearted soul, the pure-hearted individual takes refuge in the inner master, then the communion takes place. The essence of yoga is taught from within. And it is that teaching which is the most important, which comes from the inner master. That is the original timeless master of yoga that Patanjali speaks about. For Patanjali could have spoken about his own master, who was his mother, how much he would have loved her, Gonika. But in the Yoga Sutras, what use would it have been if he would have spoken about his mother to all his readers and listeners? That's why he speaks about the inner master, which is the master of Gonika, which was ultimately his master, his master's master, his master's master's master, and the master of all masters, which were before him and which came after him, which is this consciousness which is present within us. The idea is to take refuge in that. So when we say, even for example, in the beginning of every asana session, Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, saying that Param Brahma, that supreme essence, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, we bow down to that Guru. So if we do this with understanding, that mantra is to remind us of this inner master. So with this ends the 10 mantras on Shanti, the 10 mantras on peace. The last one is just a prayer added by me. It's not part of the 10 Shanti mantras. This prayer, because it's a very, very beautiful prayer. It's a universal prayer. And often I am asked about the origin of this one. I know nothing about the origin of this one. It's most people in India with a little bit of spiritual interest and background know this prayer. I've tried to search for its origins. Till now, I'm completely unsuccessful. But what I have found is Vidyaranya Muni, this 12th century master of Advaita Vedanta, he has composed a beautiful text, Jivan Mukti Viveka, which is a text which explains Jivan Mukti, freedom while alive, complete freedom, moksha, when a person is alive, which means freedom here and now. So there is a beautiful collection of teachings of him on this topic, where comes this beautiful, my favorite passage about yoga, that the Shaivas, the Bauddhas, the Buddhists, the Jainas, the Sankhyas, the worshippers of Shakti, the worshippers of Tantra, they all worship different divinities and they believe in different philosophical concepts. But when it comes to the practical aspect of yoga, they are deeply united in yoga. Each one of them speaks of the same yoga. And that is why somebody whose knowledge and experience is rooted in the practical experience that one derives from yoga, such a person will transcend all these divisions. Traditional divisions because of faith, because of tradition, because of philosophical ideas, because of language, because of worship style. That is why a true yogi becomes agreeable to all, and all have faith in him or in her. So a beautiful sentence about yoga in the same text. And there he says that when a person, which I started speaking about in the beginning, when a person through the practice of pratyahara works on reducing this raga, selfish attachment, and dvesha and hatred, and finds peace in his life, her life, then he prays constantly. His life gets filled up with compassion for all beings, and then his prayer becomes this. This is the context in which then he quotes this mantra. So even he's not the author of this mantra, but this was a prayer even at his time 800 years ago. So we don't know the origin. Maybe at some point I will find the origin, but till now I have not found the origin. But it is certainly even such a great master, and in the Advaita non-dualistic Vedanta tradition, I consider him as one of the 3 greatest masters, precisely because he emphasizes a lot on unifying the theoretical aspect of Advaita Vedanta to the practical aspect of yoga, by which I specifically mean the 8-limbed path of yoga. So for me, he is the bridge between everything that I do. Ashtanga Yoga, the practice of the 8 limbs, and also the deeper understanding of the Upanishads. So there he mentions this prayer, which we always recite at the end of every session. It's a beautiful prayer, and anybody can recite it. May all become happy. May all be free from illness, diseases, suffering. May all see what is pleasant and beautiful. A translation of the same word that I have been talking about in the previous classes, Bhadra, which means radiant and pleasant. May everybody experience that which is radiant and pleasant. Neither which is pleasant but dark, nor which is radiant but unpleasant, but that which is radiant and pleasant, both. May everyone experience that. May no one partake in suffering. May no one suffer. So even the desire to, if we consider someone our enemy, then we should work on reducing this desire that may they suffer. No, that is not. Ma kaschit, kaschit, no one, not even our enemies, not even someone whom we hate or someone who hates us. May no one suffer. This much is beautiful. These days, some other shlokas are also added to this verse, which are generally recited. I will just recite and explain them. Sarvastaratu Durgani, which means may everybody cross over difficulties in their lives. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyatu, may everyone experience only what is radiant and pleasant. Sarvaha Sadbuddhim Apnotu, may everyone acquire correct understanding. This was also Mahatma Gandhi's prayer. Sabko Sanmati De Bhagwan. He just every day in the evening in his prayer, he used to say, may everyone acquire correct understanding. Correct understanding which resolves tension. Not that type of understanding which not only creates tension but fuels it further. Not such understanding. Such understanding which, if there is tension, then let it be soothed out. May such understanding come to everyone. Sarvaha sarvatra nandatu. May everyone be happy in this world. Then what about the bad guys? There is a prayer also for them. May they become good. Durjanaha sajjano bhuyat. May the bad ones become good. That is what we can pray for them. And what about the good ones? May they acquire peace. Sajjanaha shanti apnuyat. May the good ones acquire peace. And what about those who have acquired peace? Shanto muchyeta bandhebhya. Someone who has acquired peace, may he be free from the bondage of ignorance. And if when he is free, then what? May he help others to become free. Muktaschanyat vimochayet. Once he is free himself, let him descend back into the, like in Socrates' imagery, let him descend back into the cave and let him free others also. So, like this, there are several other shlokas that are very beautiful and added to this one, but this one seems to be the most ancient one. I don't know. Sarvastaratu Durgani is also in fact very ancient. It is by Mahakavi Kalidasa. So all of them are pretty ancient and very beautiful. So with this, I think we have concluded the 10. Just to summarize the salient points from each one. The first mantra, may it bring peace to our inhalation and exhalation. So the first mantra, we can, if we want to grasp out the essence, then the first mantra tells us that peace is to be found by focusing one's attention to inhalation and exhalation, what you can call in Buddhism known as anapanasati, mindful breathing. So that is the first one. The second, the quintessence in the second one, the whole way I was thinking, which one should I take? There are two in it. One is whatever we study, may it become radiant. So either this one, I let you choose, or may we never hate each other. For me, both are equally important, because the fact our understanding has become radiant means that we have freed ourselves from hatred. So it's one sentence there, Tejasvina vadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. So let's treat it as one sentence, and one point, one salient point from that. I'm even tempted to get a third one. Let us work together. Sahaviryam karavavahi. It's a beautiful mantra. And yes, in the third one, Shariram me vicharshanam, may my body be very active. A beautiful idea. May my tongue be exceedingly sweet. A beautiful idea. But this has to be connected with what comes later. May my speech be established in my mind, and may my mind be established in my speech. Otherwise you have a sweet tongue, but so we have to work on both. Sweet tongue as well as a sweet heart. Sweet heart is more important. Sometimes a bitter tongue is not as harmful as having a sweet tongue but a bitter heart. That is in the long run. And so that's a good reminder. Karnabhyam bhuri vishvam. And may I hear abundantly with my ears, which means receive a lot of living wisdom. Wisdom from the masters who speak from their own experience. So that can come only through our ears. And yes, the fourth one, as a whole, the mantra, because Trishanku is a great sinner, but realizing the source within himself, of which the source of every human being within himself, which is not only pure in nature, but the realization of which purifies even a sinner from a tremendously sinful life into becoming a great saint and sage. This message, and I think when we went through this mantra, many of us, yes, my mother always says that it is the most beautiful mantra of all the mantras. So the essence of that mantra is also very beautiful. The fifth mantra is about that consciousness, the same source, which is not present in a particular space or time, but which is filling up everything. So that's why the idea of Purna, omnipresence, that which fills up everything. You could say that it's just a positive description of shunya, emptiness, whether you call empty of everything or whether you call that which fills up everything. It's just saying that one glass is half full or it is half empty. They are just two figures of speech but point out the same thing, so that mantra makes us aware of that. The sixth mantra, the salient point in the sixth mantra was the declaration that everything in this world is that Brahman, is that pure consciousness. So that declaration was there. And yes, in the seventh one, the salient point is, may my speech be established in my mind, and may my mind be established in my speech. And in this way, may that universal essence become manifest to me the way this physical body is manifest in front of me. So that the most manifest one with which I even know my physical body. In yoga, everything that I come to know about my physical body is ultimately with that light of consciousness. Because I cannot reach my back. But with awareness, I can see my back, not with these two eyes. I cannot see my back with these two eyes. I cannot see my inner limbs with these two eyes. But with the eye of awareness, with the eye of consciousness, I can see even in Shirshasana I'm seeing nothing. And yet, with the eye of consciousness, I can see the whole body. But then ultimately, if our years and years of practice, I'm only seeing the body, and fail to see the eye with which I'm seeing it, the eye of consciousness with which I'm seeing the body, then my yoga practice has not led me to the last stage. So that's why the most manifest one, which makes everything manifest, may that become manifest to me. So that was a beautiful part of that mantra. The 8th mantra is very small, and it just says, may my mind be impelled towards what is radiant and joyful. So that is again the salient point in there. The salient point in the first part of the 9th mantra is beautifully, the best way are those 3 monkeys, and swasti, which then leads to a state of well-being. And in the 10th one, it is to take refuge in the inner light of consciousness, which enlightens all the layers that we try to bring order in. All the layers on that day I explained as gardens, and the ultimate gardener. So to take refuge in the ultimate gardener, after bringing order into the gardens. That is the salient point in the last of the 10 Shanti mantras. And then, of course, the result of this Shanti, the result of this peace, should be leading us towards universal compassion. If we experience that peace in ourselves, then we should wish for this peace to be experienced by everybody in this world, without any discrimination, caste, creed, nationality, ethical identity, linguistic identity. Any walls that you can list should be destroyed by this prayer. That is how I would summarize the 10 Shanti mantras that took us 66 hours to discuss in great detail. And today, as I was walking down, I was thinking that these 65 hours in the past 2 years, and the hours that I invested into preparing for these lectures, would be my most beautiful hours of my life till now. That's all what I can say. So thank you very much for being an inspiration by your presence. And yes, it has been a wonderful journey in these 2 years. And
those who are not all the time here,
yes,
all the talks on the Shanti mantras are on YouTube.
yes,
Right from
all
the
of them.
beginning to the end.
Yes.
If you want to study them.
If a window in your heart tells you, then it's all there. Whenever you feel that you would like, it's there. Okay, so let us conclude with the same prayer for universal well-being. Yes, we will now, we won't start anything new till October. We will have other lectures. I don't think, because now the course is coming, then the yoga festival, that we have time to think about it. No, here I said we will do the two we will most likely study the 2 sutras on the asanas. On asanas from the Yoga Sutras. So.
She said that was an idea of
No,
asanas.
that we will do next time. I will have to go through the session carefully. So we will do it then. And yeah, so basically there is even no time, because then the yoga festival is coming, then the group from Arabia will be here, then again your intensive course will be there. So there will always be something. Then, yes, then the Upanishad intensive will come 7 days in April, and then again the intensive course. So, and then the Chinese group in May. Yeah, it's not sure. Yes. No, but most likely, yeah. Let's see. And then the center goes to rest. So from October onwards, we will start a new topic.
Everybody has an idea.
Yeah.
We can say it, we can think about.
She also suggests Shvetashvatara. I was also,
Also, it was very
yeah, so we can, Shvetashvatara, yes. Even if not all the mantras, then we can choose some of the essential mantras and we can go through them. Because it's quite a big text, so we can go through some of the essential mantras. I was thinking of Drigdrishya Viveka, but the majority is Shvetashvatara. So,
No, but and once we said also about, the different aspects from different masters about yoga sutras, like that Jain master who talks about the yoga sutras. We also wanted to have the essence out of that,
yeah,
which is also very beautiful.
yeah.
Because that bit, what was the name of the
Haribhadra Suri. Haribhadra Suri, yes.
commentary on the Patanjali Yoga Sutras also?
Yes.
So I tell a lot about
No. That's Hemabhadra. Hemabhadra, I think it's Hemabhadra, yes. Yes, I would have to check again.
not available in English, only that one which is.
I have to check. Because many of his works now have been translated, but I have to check. I have to check again. Yeah, there is a whole ocean out there. Yeah, that's also, these are the possibilities. Let's see. Whatever the call will be, that will happen. Okay.
Yeah, we have
The call.
how we say rough understanding of the names of the
Asanas.
not the deck.
Yes, that would be a very interesting. Just talks on the names on the asana names.
Also, we know more about Veda.
Yeah.
Otherwise, only know one aspect.
Yes. True. That's also a very interesting. Yes. Different possibilities. We will choose something. Okay, let's conclude. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्तिः 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 My humble salutations to you. Thank you very much.